everybody. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Seeking Play podcast. I'm Dr. Jane Hession.
And my name is Ronan Healy.
I would also like to remind our listeners at home that you can watch our interviews on Spotify. And this can be quite interesting as we asked a number of our guests throughout this season to build their answers using Lego. So in today's episode, we were joined by the wonderful D Gamage. So Di trained as a drama teacher, although she never intended to work in schools. She worked with young people at risk of offending and discovered the therapeutic application of drama whilst working with these vulnerable young people. She worked as a residential social worker before training to become a drama therapist. Shortly afterwards, she undertook training as a play therapist and was one of the first practitioners in the UK. She has worked in the NHS, the NSPCC, and the private sector. She is a Buddhist psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, and a child psychotherapist. And she is also a trainer with a leading child psychotherapy program in London. Di regularly teaches in Athens and has delivered workshops and lectures internationally as far afield as Pakistan. Di also writes fiction and has an MA in creative writing. This was her lockdown venture. Di is the author of Playful Awakening, Releasing the Gift of Play in Your Life. So after we watched Di's wonderful interview again, myself and Ronan picked out 3 quotes that we really, really enjoyed. So we want to share them with you now. So Di said that adult playfulness is about being present, to not jump to conclusions, to be curious so you can shift your perspective. She also said that play is about things coming together, being able to join the dots. And play can protect us from overwhelm. It supports us in finding meaning.
And yeah, I would say there will be a lot of ground covered, and we have all the links in the show notes. We ourselves learned a lot from chatting with Di, as we do with all of our guests. And just one thing we're very conscious of, and we probably alluded to it in episode 1, is that we're not advocating for what we describe as yay for play every day. That play is going to radically transform any organization. It's not. And we understand that taking a stance on play and playfulness is an ideology in itself. It's a belief system. It's a worldview. And to advocate for a more playful organization, it can be a tyranny in a way. Particularly in a service industry, as a service design studio, we're conscious of there is an emotional labor that staff on the front line have to be cordial all the time. Particularly in a healthcare setting where it can be really challenging. I think we're speaking to maybe a younger designer who might be listening to this podcast and thinking play is the answer to everything. It's not, and playful interactions need to be meaningfully considered. So we really just want to raise that. There's being cordial, which can be a challenge, and then to try and heap on top of any touch point being playful, it can be really difficult for staff again. So again, we're not advocating that play is going to solve everything. It can make things, services and interactions far more complex. So again, consider it meaningfully. And in episode 1, we spoke about a serious workplace and just got people to understand that there are elements of play that naturally exist in an organization. And, you could say what in a serious organization, there's the fabric of play kind of weaving its way through your company. And you just might not be aware of it. And particularly for this interview with Di, you would imagine the serious environment for counseling and therapy. Like, surely it can't be a place of play or playful thinking. But again, play therapy would be counter to that belief, and it is a passion of Di's and a passion for so many people who are helping those who are adults as well as kids move into beyond challenging and difficult circumstances in their lives. And really, what would that mean to talk about a more playful organization. Think of Southwest Airlines, and Southwest Airlines have when the airline stewards are reading their safety instructions at the beginning of a flight. If you've ever seen a video, and I think we'll link it to the show notes, they do it meaningfully. They do it using creativity and humor, and they have a little story to tell. So they've transformed what is described as a touch point playfully. They've reimagined an ordinarily kind of boring touch point or interaction with the customer, and they've done that. We would now see it as using kind of the name of Di's book, a playful awakening. So that's how we have been thinking about Di's book, integrating it into our work. Like, how can we look at touch points and playfully awaken them? And just for us, we read Di's book in early 2018, and it's something that we've been considering. Everyone talks about digital transformation and systemic change. And maybe as you're listening to this interview, maybe playful awakenings within organizations could be something that could happen at some touch points sometimes. Again, not all the time, but maybe sometimes playful awakenings could become a design consideration. So for now, we'd like to thank you for listening and being a listener, and we hope you really enjoy the episode.
Yeah, it was a fantastic episode. So yeah,
take care.
Enjoy it. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
D Gamage, you're very welcome to the Seek and Play podcast. Thank you so much for being our second guest on our podcast series. And Ronan and I absolutely loved your book, which we will get into today. So thank you again. We're really excited to talk all things play with you this morning.
Wonderful. Well, it's a real privilege to be here. And I think the thing is that when you write anything or you do anything in the world, you just don't know where it's going to, who's going to read it, and how they're going to respond. So it's like an echo back, really, in a way, and it's just incredibly validating for me. I will own that, but also for this subject of play. Which, as you can probably tell, I'm passionate about. So, yeah.
And I will say that that's what we've been leveraging off. We've been leveraging off of the passion from the writing, be it academic papers or literature like yours, or books like yours, because it can be a challenge to think like, and playful adult, is that part of an identity that I want to assume? And we have literally been leveraging off of, or sucking a bit of the passion out of every piece of knowledge we can get for us to continue our journey. So that's why we were so passionate about talking with you, because your book is a significant milestone for us to build our confidence to continue with this Lego existence. So thank you.
Wow.
So obviously we're big, both big fans of your book. But before we get into your book, I'd like to kind of maybe delve into, your background, find out a bit more about Di. So would you be able to share with the listeners, what were you like as a kid?
Probably a little bit moody, stubborn, probably. I played a lot. I've got a brother who's 2 years older than me, who did at times probably lead me astray. But he was very adventurous, and I just went along with that. And also my dad was really playful as well. So it was a very kind of active, quite a masculine, adventurous sort of play. But it's interesting because I also did have dolls myself. But I do remember that my dad, because my dad was very big on sort of do it yourself and, house things. And he had some cement left over one time, and he poured it into one of my doll's bowls, and that was her porridge. And so it was we were a very close family. We did lots of family holidays. We weren't particularly wealthy, but we went to the seaside and played in the sand and the sea and did lots of adventurous things. but also I played by myself as well quite a lot, and I was quite experimental. And you know, I think probably most children have tried making rose perfume out of rose petals.
Yeah.
It works out.
Yes.
But you just keep trying, you know. And I think for me it was very experimental.
Right.
Also I think I read a lot. And I lived quite close to where the Bronte sisters were in Haworth.
Okay.
Cool.
And they were hugely influential in my life. So the kind of, and also their worlds, you know, the way that they created stories themselves. I think I learned to tell stories when I was quite young. And my dad used to make stories up for us, but they were always about Tom, Dick and Harry. There were no females in the stories at all. So I just had to adapt.
Okay. And look, it sounds heartwarming. It sounds experiential. It sounds tactile. The words I can think of, and fun and playful. And like in all of that, in your brother kind of like helping you push the boundaries, and your dad also, is there any bumps, bruises, scrapes, breakages from that time that you think contributes to your sense of identity as an adult?
Yes. Oh, amazingly, I've never broken a bone in my body, so I'm touching wood. I used to horse ride a lot and would fall off fairly regularly, as people do when they're learning. But there was one occasion where my brother and I went out against my dad's order. We left the garden and we found, almost behind our house, a patch of wasteland, and we ended up in sinking mud.
Wow.
And I think I was about 4 and he would have been about 6. And I think it did impact both of us. I mean, obviously we survived. We could see my dad in the back garden, which was the most peculiar thing. And we were shouting and screaming. And our neighbours were watching from the road, which was, I think for me, that moment of seeing people watching children who are clearly in difficulty and not doing anything, I think that planted a seed in me to do what I do in my life as a therapist. And my difficulty in keeping quiet about things that are where children are concerned. So that has had a huge impact on me. I think for my brother, because he was that bit older than me, he was much more aware of the dangers. And I think it did affect him psychologically. It was probably more traumatic for him than it was for me. I mean, obviously my dad eventually heard us and came and rescued us, and then promptly smacked us on the bum and put us in the bath and put us to bed. I think he was just very scared about what had just happened. Wow. My mum was at work, so when she came home, he obviously got a good telling off as well for not watching us. So I think that was quite a significant event in my childhood.
I think that's incredible. I think that for you to connect that to
your
current role and profession, to be the voice of children who aren't heard, that's an incredible connection. That's really profound. Wow.
And also being so young, as you said, that you know, your brother went into protective mode. Like you were so young that you didn't realize the danger that you were actually in, you know, until afterwards. So wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I think it did affect him. And I think as a consequence through his life, I think he has had some psychological difficulties. And I decided when I was 13 that I needed to be a psychiatrist, because that's what he was engaged in. He's done a lot of work now, and he's one of my best friends. But I did feel somehow responsible. But the pull for me was that I wanted to be an actor. And so there's this kind of dynamic that these two paths. So I did science A levels, which was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, because I missed most of them, my physics, because I was doing a dance and drama certificate.
Wow.
So yeah, so then I became, what do you know, a drama therapist, you know, which was just perfect for me, really.
Yeah, perfect segue.
Yeah, I think that is a perfect segue for my next question, which would be, what would adult playfulness mean to you? What does it mean to you? Adult playfulness, yeah.
Adult playfulness is, whoa, so it's a big question. So it's about being able to basically have an open mind and be in the present moment, so that someone doesn't kind of jump to conclusions or judgments, but rather to just be curious and inquiring, and to also be able to shift perspective, so being able to see something from someone else's point of view, but also having a sense of agency in that as well, that to know what we're feeling is crucial. So that connection to that embodied connection to ourselves, noticing that, but not being kind of controlled by that. So recognizing, you know, there are lots of things in this world that I have a response of anger to. But it's okay, so recognize the anger without being overwhelmed by it, and then inquiring as to what's that about for me, what need is not being met in that. So adult playfulness, but it's also kind of being able to see, you can see it on someone's face when they're in their play face. And I kind of do sort of try to do that quite a lot with adults. A really good example of that would be Miranda, you know, the TV show Miranda, where she turns to the camera and you know, she has those kind of expressions of, oh God, what am I going to do now? I believe I'm in this mess. That sort of thing. So that also, I can see when someone has that their playfulness available in relationship. I can see that.
And how do you, when you're essentially, if I'm to understand your work, of course I never can understand the dynamics when you're with somebody in therapy, but there's a resonance, there's a connection that's formed to help people open themselves to deeper trauma or challenges. And how do you balance taking your work seriously, but also not taking your work seriously? In that it's a different dynamic for most people in an office setting. So how do you calibrate that?
Okay, so there is a practice called detached compassion, where we can feel the pain of someone else's suffering, but we also know that it's not ours. So we don't make it ours, but we're able to recognize it in the space and to honor and to witness that. It's taken a long time, and it is an ongoing process for me, because I can still be really impacted by people's material. And I think that's important as a therapist it's being able to hold it though without becoming overwhelmed by it. I mean, there's lots of examples that come to mind where it's literally like, whoa. And it can be in someone's expression where something has just become a realization for someone in their life. And so we can share that. It's like, whoa, that's big. And it's about being honest with people as well. And in the Buddhist psychotherapy that I practice, it's described as joint practice. So there is an understanding that the therapist is affected by the client. We're not separate. You know, we're not that kind of, you know, classic in psychoanalysis, that blank screen. It's a relationship. And my job is to support someone and allow them to feel safe with me. So that's the therapeutic alliance that you were describing there. I have regular supervision still after 30 odd years of being a therapist, and I am in therapy myself. I've I found one of the very few voice movement therapists in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's amazing, absolutely amazing. So we work with voice a lot. So in my last session, we were working with the chakras.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not to ask you
Wild.
to do that, but could you describe that? I'm fascinated by that. That's interesting.
Okay, so sound is really important, and voice is really important, and how we communicate and how we breathe in our bodies, because my experience is, for many people, breath is difficult for them. You know, if we become activated, our breathing it becomes shallow and quick. And so our body goes into a fight flight response, or reaction, I should say. So being able to have kind of an awareness of what goes on in our breath, we can notice our breath is it informs us of what's going on emotionally for us. And so also being able to breathe deeply right into the belly. We can support the vagus nerve that runs through our body. So, you know, our parasympathetic nervous system goes, oh, okay, so it's safe. Yeah, well, we'll just kind of come back into this space. So it's a really good way of supporting clients as well as myself to not go into that kind of panic state. But let's just take a moment and breathe and connect. And sometimes I don't even say it to a client, I just do it myself. And there's something that happens energetically in the space between us. Yeah,
I think
children too.
Children too.
And I think it's incredible now even to see in all over the world in the education system, even our little girl who's 6, they're now being taught how to breathe in school, which is something so powerful. Because I know, for me, really, I only started really working on my, breath work during COVID when I was, pregnant with my little boy, and it helped me, tremendously, even to this day. So yeah, definitely, I echo that 100%. It's such an incredible tool that we have, that we just need to know how to use.
Absolutely.
And even to speak to the value of polyvagal theory, Dr. Stephen Porges, he's on our hit list. It would be amazing if we could get, he's a rock star to us, but to try and understand, I suppose ultimately what we're trying to understand is what is happening when people are in a room. Like this, we can call it 4E, 5E cognition, but I think also physiologically. And we understanding Dr. Stephen Porges' work has again been another significant milestone in us understanding what is actually happening when people are engaged in this play or Lego serious play specifically. It's a whole new topic we could literally spend an hour on. So, but fascinating to hear that's what you do. It's great.
So I want to take you back maybe to your earlier stages in your career. So I want you to maybe look back when you were starting your career, and what advice would you give to your younger self, either about being, too serious or more playful in the way that you thought or interacted with others?
Gosh, I kind of want to say thank you to her.
Mm-hmm.
I feel quite emotional about that, because I think I've always been someone who is more likely to say yes to opportunities. And I think that is because I did have a good enough beginning, a secure base to go and venture out into the world. So I want to say thank you to my younger self, because I think there's something that happens when you look back on your life, is that you kind of take these steps and you don't really know why you're doing it. I just followed my instinct and my passion a lot of the time. And I was also very proud of myself for staying on a 4-year teacher training course at drama school, when I knew with every bone in my body that I did not want to be a teacher in a school. And it never entered my head that I would leave, though. I just kind of put up with the teaching bit, which I just I do have a problem with schools.
Mhm.
That's another subject. Because you know, that quote that you have on your website about Picasso, that all children are artists,
Yeah.
until it's kind of knocked out of them and repressed. And I think our education system does many children a great deal of damage, and I didn't want to contribute to that in any way. I would have found that very difficult. So I'm really grateful to younger Di for just pursuing the things that and taking risks, actually, because I think I was doing drama therapy before I knew that drama therapy existed, and I was just experimenting and making mistakes, and that's okay. You know, I learned to make mistakes and not hang on to those, you know, but just say, okay, what did I learn from that, really? Yeah.
Wow.
And I think we've kind of covered off. What I was going to ask you is, like, how did you become interested in your field of research? But I'm going to change it slightly to say, like, what do you continue to find interesting about your field of research?
It just keeps growing and growing and growing. And I read something recently, because I'm 60 now, and I think when you get into this decade, something happens psychologically. It's like I now can identify as someone who is older, and I've read some research recently about how to keep the brain healthy, and there were lots of things about diet and exercise and sleep, and I just thought, where is play in this? You know, the importance of play. And I remember reading this amazing article about improv for elders, and so there's something that's fired up in me now about, I think I need to write about this again, because if you see older people, you know, the George Bernard Shaw quote that we stop playing not because we're older, we get older because we stop playing. And if you look at playful elders, there is something incredibly youthful about them. And we can kind of, you know, fossilize in a way. Obviously, I think I'm getting younger, and that, I'm somehow, there is that 7-year-old who's very alive in me still, and she wants to, you know, do something when she grows up, but she doesn't quite know what she wants to do. So some sort of adventurer.
Cool.
Well, you look absolutely incredible, may I add. For
Thank you.
so, oh my God, I was shocked when you said that. You look amazing. Wow.
Thank you.
So I suppose just saying maybe about your career, because obviously you have had, you know, many paths in your career. So how did your career evolve over time, really?
So I knew when I left drama school that I did not want to go into school. But in the final year, my 4th year, so we could choose where we wanted to have our final placement. And I chose a charity working with ex-offenders and young people at risk of offending in Hackney, in London. And I just loved it. I loved it. I loved particularly working with the young people. And they offered me a job. So I walked straight into a job there as a training officer. And it was back in the 80s when there was so much freedom, really, to explore and experiment. And I set up a project for non-school attenders. So I literally went round, I suppose because I had got a teaching degree, I went round local secondary schools and said, do you have any non-school attenders? And they just couldn't wait to say, yes, we've got this person, this person, this person. So we set up a group for these young people, and we did drama, we did music. They brought their music, they taught us to dance in lots of ways. We did art. I still have a pen and ink drawing that a young man did during that time. They did office skills, English and maths, and I ended up doing what I realized later was drama therapy. And what was amazing for me is seeing that these young people were turning up every day. And at 8:30 in the morning when we got there, they were sitting, waiting outside. I just knew that the kind of mainstream education system had failed these young people. They weren't failures. The system had failed them. And they were amazing. And they were my best teachers, those young people. Then I became a residential social worker. Again, lots of very steep learning.
Wow.
Very steep learning, where I really did meet raw trauma face to face. And then I trained as a drama therapist. So I was doing my drama therapy training when I was a night care officer in that children's home. And then trained as a play therapist shortly after that, because the job that I had as a drama therapist was working with adults with profound learning difficulties and realizing that the drama therapy was not appropriate for that client group.
Yeah.
So it was working with adults with profound difficulties that took me into understanding more about play. And yeah, so I worked with them for a while. I worked in the NSPCC in the Child Sexual Abuse Consultancy. Had some amazing, I've been incredibly fortunate in my life to meet people who have mentored me, supported me, guided me through my life. One of those people was Anne Bannister, who was an amazing psychodramatist and drama therapist at the NSPCC. And then, yeah, so I'm a jobbing psychotherapist, basically. Wow. And I teach, so I train child psychotherapists in London, and I've been really fortunate to be able to travel to Pakistan and train there. And what I know about play is it's a universal language.
Yep.
When I work with Greek students, I have a translator, but when we're in the play space, we don't, play is just there. I get a boost every time I work with people. Yeah.
But I mean, that's fascinating. For the one thing, there's so much in that, like what an incredible, amount of help you've provided people. But there's one thing you said in that, like you said, in the 80s, there was more freedom. And I think that, again, anyone who ever speaks about, the education system, I don't think anyone is ever speaking directly about the teachers and the principals and the people who were there, like doing the hard yards, giving their all. Oftentimes it's just regulatory constraints and overly bureaucratic processes and procedures. And I think we feel oftentimes that as you progress in life chronologically, we move through the years, it's always progress. And I think that like you had a more playful existence to put things together and make your own, if I'm kind of understanding this right. And that seems to be stripped away over the years. And it kind of does translate then into children's ability to just free play.
Yes.
And even when you look at playgrounds, some people will kind of look at a playground and say, oh, it's a playground, but it's actually very sterile. It's a uniform, universal imprint of how kids should play. And it's excessively safe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I completely agree with you. I remember working with a group of students in London, and one of them had just lost another friend to knife crime. We were talking about how so many children's playgrounds and adventure playgrounds now have been sold off. Green spaces, play spaces for children, natural spaces, woodland. That's there are some places that are dangerous. Of course there are. I ended up in one of them when I was 4 years old. Fortunately, I survived. But I think I completely agree with you. I think when I was at school, a lot of what was taught was through drama and play. English literature, we got up and we acted things out. We felt what it felt like. to be the child in Kes when his kestrel was killed.
Mm.
That had an impact on me, and it still has an impact on me. It's not something that is separate to us. Education is about learning about ourselves in the world, experimenting. And, you know, for me, so many discoveries are made through play, through just, noticing something, going, hang on a minute, what if, let's try that again. Oh, that's interesting. No one ever thought of that. So it's about being in the moment and being aware of what might happen. I think play is about things coming together, you know, being able to join the dots, I think is really important. And how often do you hear that things happen, disasters, tragedies happen, because no one had that capacity or time to reflect, stand back and think, if we don't do that, this is a possibility.
Yeah.
You hear about it time and time and time again in the media. No one thought that might be something that could happen.
Yeah.
So I mean, I did go into a school. I met, through my book, a really beautiful head teacher in a primary school, who contacted me and said, this is how I want my school to be.
Wow.
So I went in and worked with the teachers. We met with some parents, and we ran a project for the year 6 pupils. They were very vulnerable. There was a lot of vulnerability in the school, and kind of using drama and play to support them in transitioning into secondary school.
Wow.
So it is absolutely not a criticism of teachers.
No.
And, you know, I think their hands are tied.
Yeah.
Their hands are tied, and it's people who are so asleep. And I know that kind of, you know, Ronan, you asked about falling asleep. I think that there is a kind of, we're sleepwalking a lot of the time. And I just kind of want to shake people and say, wake up. Wake up.
I think segue into your book is perfect.
And I think, definitely everything you're saying. I think, you know, as human beings, we have an innate capacity, you know, to play. And I think that that's so important, what you're saying, Di, as well, that like playing, especially with children, it allows us to view the world with curiosity, which is so important and so imperative right now. So I think perfect segue into your book. I'm going to read a few of our favorite excerpts from your book, The Playful Awakening. And then I have a question about the excerpt. So I would, you know, want you to unpack it for us. So, okay. So this is from The Playful Awakening, Releasing the Gift of Play in Your Life. So this book is an inquiry into the complex nature of play. Its part in the creation of the cloak that enables survival in this imperfect relational world, and the role of play in the process of awakening that encompasses the psychological, intellectual, physical, social, and spiritual sphere, reminding us that life is more than just surviving. It is about thriving. It is about being connected to something bigger than the individual self. Okay, so there's so much to unpack with what I've just read. But if we can just focus on the last line, play is about connecting to something bigger than the individual self. What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm going to use some metaphors because that's the because what I'm sort of trying to convey there is, and I'm not the first person to do this, of course, is that we're in this physical form, but we are beyond this as well. And so one of the metaphors is the ocean. So in terms of, if we think about the ocean as an absolute reality, and that individual waves emerge from that ocean and are finite and exist for a time and then they dissolve. That the wave is the ocean, and the ocean is in the wave. And so Carl Jung spoke about the numinous, that there is something beyond the individual, and also kind of beyond the collective unconscious, deeper than the collective unconscious, that tells us that we are not separate to each other. We are conditioned by, and we condition other people. We have a part to play in this world, and so in Buddhism they talk about form and emptiness. That form again arises from emptiness, so it's a bit like the ocean and the wave, but there is mystery there, and I think that human beings are always trying to kind of make sense of that in some way. I wouldn't call myself a religious person, but I think, as the Dalai Lama says as well, that, you know, spirituality is not the same as religion. In some ways, religions become those kind of often very fixed forms of our understanding of spirituality. I you know, if you were to ask me, is there a God? I have to say, there is something around the divine, absolutely. And William Blake described creativity as evidence of the divine. And, you know, whatever that means to us. So I don't want to kind of close down. I'm still inquiring around this. And, you know, when I look at something in nature, I can experience that for myself. When I hear parts of Mozart, something, it just connects in with me that is, I think, beyond me as an individual, but something that is conveyed over time and space. So yeah, something that is bigger than the individual is, I think, that the individual, in a sense, is that metaphor of the cloak, that it is our physical DNA, you know, how we are affected and create a sense of self with a small s. But the cloak is not all of who we are. And I think that holding that allows us to see the world and experience ourselves in a very different way. I think the angel in the cloak said, you know, what would it be like if humans didn't only see themselves as dust, as form? How would we live our lives? I think that there is an intense seriousness to that, and also something that is very light and playful. We come and we go in this physical form. How can we contribute to the bigger picture? That's what I'm interested in. We always want to kind of narrow it down, though, I think, you know, to kind of idolize the messenger rather than the message. And I think that ultimately it's about being a conduit for message. It's not that I am not taking responsibility, though, for myself. It's both of those things.
It's so interesting you say that, because we'll say 6 or even 8 years ago, I think we started a kind of play journey about 8 years ago, when we were planning to be parents. And I think, like all first-time parents, you go off and read, like, you go buy 10 books and you read 3 at best. And so it was an introduction, we'll say, maybe because our little girl is nearly 7, so 2 years prior, so about maybe 9 years ago. And I was very much atheist, very much like, no, that's it, nothing else. And I would, like, even your point of like looking at nature, I'd go, that's a tree, there's a tree, and look, that's a tree, and I don't believe in God. But having read play and it just becomes imbued in your very being, your becoming as well, in terms of like just playing with concepts and playing with a feeling of and then I think that kind of playful spirit gets reenacted or gets lit up again, and then from that you start to think and feel differently, and you see the world differently. So absolutely, I think again, it's going to speak to your playful awakening. I think what I'm describing is part of the playful awakening. I think
that's but just what you're saying there as well. I think even me looking back on my earlier stages of my career as well, I think becoming more playful goes hand in hand with confidence. I don't know if you agree or not, but I
completely agree.
For me, especially as a woman, it's all about confidence. And sometimes I look back at my earlier stages of my career and I think, God, I wish I hadn't taken these, amazing opportunities so serious and had enjoyed the moment more. And I think that all comes with bravery and vulnerability and play. But I think even now, be brave, and play. It's all to do with your confidence, for sure.
I think confidence is a huge thing, and I think that we can grow that confidence as well. And in the play space, that's the place that confidence can grow. So I've done quite a bit of fooling and clowning, and you're ridiculous when you do it. It is bonkers. Why would adults do these things? Because it's really fun, and you kind of strip away all those oughts and shoulds and musts. Just experience being in that play space with someone else. But there's very serious work in that play space. Bowen White, the medical doctor, when he goes to places, to war zones, to administer medicines to children, he dresses as a clown. And the children don't see the white coat and the stethoscope. They see a clown who is wanting to relate to them and to play. And so they're more open and they feel safer with him. So, there are really important applications for this. And, I do sort of sometimes have a fantasy of what would it be like in the Houses of Parliament, if someone actually was able to, not in a vicious way, because I think clowning, I think play also has a shadow side. And that people will use it to attack. And in my mind, that ceases to be play, because play is not a weapon. Play is about a coming together and a joint inquiry and exploration. If you're being attacked, I work with many children who've experienced sexual abuse, and that is the way that they have been abused. So the abuser will say, this is just a game. Of course, it's not a game. It's abuse. Play does not, essential play does not adhere to that distortion. I feel strongly about that, because also when I then work with that child, they are fearful of play, because their experience is that this is where I get hurt. This is where someone has power over me. Play, free play is about, does not adhere to that hierarchy of power. It's a fluid, no one person holds that trump card. You might experiment with a trump card and go, I'm going to hold the trump card now, but the other person can say, no, I don't want you to have the trump card. I'm not going to play that game, and walk away. So I can't remember what the question was now. I think I've gone off track, but I think
you haven't.
I just feel that I think that the word play is also problematic in our society, because it's seen as childish, something that only children do, and grown-ups and adults don't engage in that. So we're trained to cut off from something that is innate in us. Is basically our life force. We're told that you no longer can access that. That was for then. And now you have to be a grown-up in this world. And Brian Sutton Smith says the opposite of play
it's not work.
It's not work, it's depression. And we look around us.
That's so interesting in that, like, there's so much money spent, billions around the world spent on well-being in organizations. And invariably it's mindfulness and which, for us, it has a sense of individuality. As wonderful as mindfulness is, I'm not going to critique, being mindful. And it depends on the mindfulness practice, of course. But there's so little we see in terms of even bringing Lego serious play in. And again, it's serious. You can, the work we do is in relation to strategy development and process improvement and systems thinking, but you can use it. It's a scale of usage, of course, but for just your mental health and your relational well-being, as part of a well-being program, we don't see it. And I think it's this stigma that HR or learning and development or C-suite are again, they misunderstand what is play, also why do we play, and then the benefits of play. But we would describe it as a primitive ancestral wisdom.
Yes, I like that.
It's in us for a reason, but yet we seem to close the door on it. It's like, no, workplace doesn't work in here, but we'll spend billions of dollars and euros on corporate sponsorship of sports teams. And we'll bring our clients that we want to close a deal to a sports game. And we'll wear that's the irony of this. And let's spend billions or even let's go to a sports game with 80,000 people and watch a group of male or females. So it's a huge gathering of people. And we'll put on our jersey and put a bank or a fast food provider on our chest. Whereas you would never call into that bank or the fast food provider and go, hello, I'd like to buy one of your jumpers, please. But we don't even see it for our love of play. But then corporate, no play.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we've fallen asleep.
Yeah.
It serves a purpose.
Absolutely. I think let's get back to your book.
Could I just say a couple of things? One is about mindfulness.
Yeah.
Because it was when I did my Buddhist psychotherapy training, which obviously it has lots of I realized how playful mindfulness is.
Okay, cool.
Amazing. So, just putting things out there. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I was talking with a very dear friend of mine last night, because I said to her, you'll never guess what I'm doing. And I said, I'm playing with Lego. And she is a clinical director. She's head of psychotherapy in a therapeutic community with offenders. And what she said to me was, we got the Lego out the other day for the men and they loved it.
They always do.
They always do.
So, that just, I wanted to share that with you. Because, but I think it's a political thing. Being a psychotherapist is a political act. I think doing the work that we collectively do is a political act, because what we're doing is we're challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And I put a photograph of myself on the mural. I don't know if you saw it. Did you see it?
Yeah.
I thought I'm just gonna do it because there's something about that kind of, I'm there. I've got a toy gun in my hand and I've fallen over, but there's something around. I am a fighter. Not in a competitive way, but I will challenge and not just take things as read because so-and-so said so.
Said it, yeah.
But why is that? And I think sometimes children can drive us mad by saying, yeah, but why is it that why is it? But we need to answer those questions.
To that point, even when we're talking to clients, there's the Toyota 5Y, which seems to be a revelation. You after 5 Ys, you'll generally get down to the root cause of something. And that can be a revelation for adults. I remember my uncle telling me that 20 years ago. He's in Lean Six Sigma, and I was fascinated by methods and processes. And I traveled around the world when I was 20 going, 5Y. But then when you have kids, you realize 55 Ys.
And that was just this morning.
So for an adult to ask 5 Ys is seen as a significant learning piece of something to learn for the workplace. We've forgotten this innate curiosity. It's always in us.
Yeah.
And even like once you ask why enough times, 'cause we've heard that like kids aren't systems thinkers. They can't understand the complexities of a system. We would argue, nor can adults. But also asking, really, we think like, you know, I won't get into that, but asking why every time is an abstraction into a greater understanding of a broader topic.
Yeah.
They're perfect systems thinkers.
Yeah, they
We
really
are
are.
all systems thinkers. But
They
again,
really
it seems to be this very academic, very cognitive thing of like,
Head.
we're, up in the head. Absolutely. Okay, we've got loads more questions.
Can I
keep
just,
going.
maybe this is a little tip for you as well.
Yes.
as parents.
Yeah.
Because I have 2 children, a girl and a boy. Spent their early education in a Steiner school, so an anthroposophical approach.
Okay.
And I actually learned a lot about play from those teachers and practitioners there. But there's a wonderful book called I Wonder, and which is a response to a child asking why, so that you say, yeah, I wonder why that is. So it opens up a dialogue and an inquiring communication between you, looking at what the possibilities might be for that.
That's fantastic. We're going to link that. We'll link that to the show notes. Of course, we're going to link your book to the show notes, and anything in relation to your social media. But absolutely, that book is going to go in the show notes. That's interesting. Like a kid can get down to your very core after a couple of questions. Why are we? And then they're in the back of the car. You're supposed to be going somewhere. Like you're trying to do your adulting, your parenting, and you feel like you're late and you're hurried. Last thing you want is more questions. And eventually, after like question number 6, you're down to this existential. Like I don't know. I just don't read enough books to answer that one, or just leave me alone. And I think that does translate into the workplace. If you ask too many questions, it takes people out of flow, out of the busy flow.
I think as well, once again, it goes down to, confidence as well in the workplace. People might think, I'm not going to ask too many questions because then people are going to question my capability to do my role, efficiently. And I think a lot of people will prefer to figure it out themselves than actually ask for help. So
the Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a child's voice that says, hang on a minute, he's not actually wearing any clothes. And all the adults going, oh, yes, aren't they lovely? But actually it's the child that says that. And everyone, then.
And we speak to that. We speak to it in terms of our workshops. We describe them more as conversations. We think workshop is loaded with, anyway, another topic. But we just think in terms of stepping out of everyone traveling at like 200 miles an hour, or kilometers an hour. Like they're so busy, and you step out, and in a way, you're just questioning process, procedures, and policies in a safe environment. And it is, and we think we're not projecting like you are now kids. It's just, or even childlike curiosity. It's just, let's call out the Emperor has no clothes in relation to the work that we're doing and how we're doing it. So we think everything translates from being a child to being an adult. We think now we just see adults as tall kids. That's it. Just because we haven't done a great job at looking after the planet. So us adults, we're just tall kids. We just make mistakes. But I think this stigma of being playful is something we think is over time going to be slowly better understood, hopefully with conversations like this.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so, to save our mental health and physical health, and on all fronts, actually. I think we need to convey this message really powerfully.
So I'm gonna go back to the cloak, because we loved the concept of the cloak. We really liked it. So I'm going to read out a little extract from your book. As relational beings, we need our cloaks to meet and engage with this material world, to navigate our way through it as skillfully as we can. The cloak is not the enemy, yet it can block or disrupt our vital energy and connection to life. Just as a cloak that is woven too densely or inflexibly precariously or inconsistently is unlikely to offer enough protection or the right sort of protection against the elements. The question then is not whether the cloak is necessary, but whether it is serving its true purpose. So can you elaborate on the cloak that adults wear?
Yeah. So I think the cloak is there, and it's really important to recognize that it's not the enemy. So we can come into relationship with it. Yeah. And I think it's about how we manage our life experiences. Good, bad, indifferent. How do we come into contact with other people? How do we present ourselves? How do we want to be seen by other people? It's something that is created through our lifetime. And I think what play allows us to do, if we're going to use that metaphor of the cloak, and I love that metaphor, is let's examine it. Let's look at what it's made up of and understand who we are in this world. Crucially, that it is not fixed, it's dynamic. You know, so some mornings, you know, we might talk about feeling and that things just kind of affect us in some ways because that it's much more kind of porous, really. Or I remember when I did my Buddhist psychotherapy training, the course director there used the phrase pad up, you know, so consciously protecting ourselves if we were going to be exploring something that was potentially uncomfortable for us. So it's kind of, for me, it's coming into relationship with the cloak. And you know, how am I doing today in the world? Oh, I'm feeling a little bit like this. Okay, so sometimes, you know, people talk about wanting to just hide under the duvet. Well, in a way, the duvet is a, for me, it could be another metaphor for the cloak. Is I just want to pull the hood over myself. How many young people do we work with where they've got hoodies and you can't see them? You know, I work with a young girl and her hair was completely over her face. So that for me is like, okay, so she's needing to protect herself. We also know that cloak is a spectrum, that it protects us and it can imprison us. It can absolutely cut us off. So it's like we're in a suit of armor. We can stop people coming in, but we're also very isolated in there. We're relational beings. So, you know, there's lots of phrases when we start thinking like this, that, you know, chink of light in the armor. So I find the metaphor of the cloak incredibly powerful. And it was something that I stumbled across in my early 20s. And it was only when I was writing Playful Awakening that suddenly I read another story and I thought, oh my God, this is the cloak. This is what he's writing about. So yeah, and then we staged it for the book launch, which was amazing experience.
Very cool. If you've got photographs of that you'd like to share, we can.
Yes, I have.
Put them up on the show notes. For us, when we were reading your book, again, we're always trying to gain a sense of confidence and an awareness of play, and how can we translate what we're doing, that it's not overly zealot around. We would describe yay for play, like yay, everything is, like you said, there's a darker side of play and some people just are not going to get it. It's a corporate setting. But you actually helped us transition away from armor. So we thought, well, adults are going to have this natural armor up against it. And forevermore, we talk about the cloak. We say, it softened. And you helped us soften out through that metaphor for, like, we thought, okay, there's a possibility that this company bringing Lego into a boardroom has less of an armor that we're facing. It's a cloak, and we can work with that. It gave us confidence. So thank you again. Thank you for that.
Thank Clifford Bax.
And Clifford. Thanks, Clifford.
And I always think about as well the cloak around ego, and I think that that's so important as well. For so many people, their cloak
Yes.
is an ego. And as you said, that can be detrimental as well
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
you know, not only your career, your personal life as well, but that is a lot of, you know, a lot of people's suited armor, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you know, I was working with someone the other day, and she said there's a lot of big egos in this company. And I translate that in my head of fragility. Yeah, if we have to have this defense, then what are we trying to protect? Ultimately, there isn't anything to defend. That's the thing. There isn't anything. You know, we are the wave that dissolves back into the ocean. I don't know if that makes sense, but so I'm so delighted that the Cloak has gone out into the world. And you think, you know, I was just sitting here before we started, and I was thinking about, you know, in fairy tales, the invisible, the cloak of invisibility in the 12 dancing princesses, and then Harry Potter, of course, with the cloak of invisibility, and using that image, that metaphor with children who are going into difficult situations, you know, and actually many children do make themselves invisible to protect themselves. So yeah, it's a powerful image, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Okay, I think we have some time for a few more excerpts. Okay, so play allows us to stay open and present to possibly overwhelming situations and circumstances, giving us the opportunity to find meaning in the darkest of times. So is this true for both adults and children? How can play help adults and children find meaning in the darkest of times?
Yeah.
So what would you mean by that?
Well, I think it was Carl Jung who said that we can bear any suffering if we can make meaning of it. I'm not saying that this is an easy practice. And there was a quote that I think I wrote down earlier about Bertolt Brecht, and he was talking about the dark times, and someone said to him, "Oh, you know, will we still be able to sing?" And he said, "Yes, we will sing about the dark times." And so I think play, in lots of ways, play can protect us from overwhelm. That overwhelm never serves any purpose, and it reinforces the falling asleep, because we have to cut off to protect ourselves. So dissociation might be something that we would talk about. But also play allows us to kind of move closer to something and further away energetically. And Robert Landy, who's a drama therapist, talks about aesthetic distance, that we need to both engage ourselves emotionally and cognitively in an experience. But if emotionally we're overwhelmed, we know that our mind we just go into fight, flight, freeze. So we're not present anymore. And what our play allows us to do is physically, you know, and I do this with clients, is that if we can create something out there by externalizing what is internal, then we can create a dialogue with that, whatever that is, whether it is an abusive partner or an experience that someone's had, can put it out there, or our younger selves, or ourselves from the future, because of course what play allows us to do is play transcends time and space. So it kind of, that's where it sits in the ocean. And so I can speak to my 7-year-old self, I can speak to my 90-year-old self, I can speak to my dead self. I can speak to people who are no longer physically in this world. But we can kind of dip in and out of. And Peter Levine talks about titration and pendulation in terms of kind of coming into contact with trauma, that how much we can tolerate. And we are the agents of that. So when I'm working with someone, if someone feels, and I pick up from them, we need to stop, let's stop, let's
Yeah.
resource, let's come back to your place of sanctuary, you know, wherever that is, that nest that you've built. Let's come and sit back in that place, and let's just breathe together. And that is out there. And it also allows us to stay connected to those parts of ourselves. And I think my favorite chapter in the book was the one around play supporting in times of trauma. And I knew the woman who was held captive with her partner. Her name, I just can't remember her name at the moment. It will come back to me. That's not important. But what they did was to create something within that place that they couldn't change. They couldn't change being captives in a concrete cell. But what they could do was to create something within that space that was theirs. And what was remarkable was when I spoke to the two of them afterwards, I asked them, being able to create those things whilst you were living that experience, did that support you in terms of ameliorating the trauma? They both said without a shadow of a doubt. And also what they did when they were there is they imagined this circle of people that they loved, and they passed an imaginary peace pipe around the circle.
Wow.
And when they were released, they spoke to those people that they had imagined, and they had those similar experiences of being in connection with the two people who were held prisoner. Now, you know, I don't know how to explain that, except that they felt they were not separate to those people who loved them. So play in so many ways supports us in finding a meaning, and that meaning can change over time. It's not fixed. I'm sure my story of the sinking mud has changed over the passage of time, and it will continue to do that. We're storytellers. We narrate our own stories, another form of play.
That's so interesting. Our tagline is we facilitate meaningful conversations, and there's so much to meaning that we will generally unpack if we're doing a presentation. But it's so interesting for you to bring the word meaning in as well. And you said that like play transcends time and space. But we in terms of, if we can bring it back into a corporate setting, we think it creates a time and a space to just step out of the flow of incredibly busy work and just be in relation with one another. And that has meaning. To be in relation with somebody, again, like if you were to ask me, describe how much I love my children, like I don't have words for that. There's some things that you can't express in terms of meaning. And we think it's somewhat lost as well in terms of like again, like if it's a corporate setting, money is important and people's time are important, but there's also an element of meaning that we don't touch on. This is the first time we've said it, that you probably don't even, it's below your conscious awareness. And we think it's more of a body-based wisdom, that being in relation with somebody, having your body in close proximity to somebody else is meaningful also. So there's layers of meaning that we think play operates on as well. And some of it is just resonating. Your body's sending a cue of safety. Again, back to Stephen Porges, to say that we are safe. Without the words that are spoken, it's this subconscious message that's been sent out, which is meaningful, but you could never articulate it when you leave the workshop or the conversations that we have. Dee, I'm going to go to another, because you've touched on it a few times, and I'm really interested in bringing it as a question. This is in relation to falling asleep. We've loved it. Like we've loved it. I would say even more than the cloak. Falling asleep for us was a big one. We're like, whoa, that's amazing. I'm going to read it. Human beings struggle with ambiguity. When over-identified with the cloak, we have great difficulty holding two conflicting positions, whether they are about ourselves, another person, a decision, or a choice. Our default position is this or that. Once that decision has been made, many of us will do whatever we can to defend that decision or idea. I believe if we all can tolerate, is certainty, needing something to be right or wrong, good or bad, we close down any further inquiry. In other words, we fall asleep. It's a wonderful reframe from being defensive. So again, you've helped us move away from armor and defensiveness, that we fall asleep. Can you talk to us about falling asleep?
Wow. So, well, there's a political aspect to this as well, but I'll just park that for now. I think it's about how we just shut down and we're not present. Often our minds are somewhere else. So we are physically in a space, but mentally we're somewhere else. But what's the point of that? Because where are we living? Where are we living if we are physically here, but we're not here? We're in this kind of no person's land, aren't we? But when we're in that state of falling asleep, we become numb, I think. It's a protection, I think. Ultimately, it's a psychic protection, overwhelm, I think, trauma. But it serves a purpose in some ways because it protects us, but it also means that we are no longer fully living a life. It's a kind of compromise, really. And I guess that's survival, as opposed to what I want in my life is to live this life as fully as I possibly can, to feel what I feel, even if those things are uncomfortable, if I don't have the answers to those things. I want to feel. I want to be awake to see what's happening in the world. I think we've been falling asleep for a very, very, very long time. I think being born, as I mentioned earlier, I think our education system contribute to this process of gradually falling asleep. But then things happen to us and we kind of don't understand why things are happening to us, because we've almost sacrificed our own sense of agency in our own lives and how we want the world to be. And there is a hierarchy of power in our world, and one of those, you've just mentioned it then, Ronan, that money is seen somehow as the god. Materialism, that we're striving for something, always striving for something, and that we measure our success in life through monetary value or materialism. They're incredible. We need money. I'm not saying that we don't need money. Of course we do, but they are potential cons for us. And we kind of, it's like there's a payoff. And so I'm really in a practice right now, personal practice of noticing when I want to buy something and opening up that space of inquiry and saying, what's that about and how do I feel about that? Short-term fixes, I work with lots of people. We've got that term retail therapy. I go out and buy myself something nice and then I feel better. What if we don't buy something nice for ourselves? What if we just sit with and allow those feelings to come up around what is really going on here? What's really happening? So it is political. I think it is a very political issue, falling asleep. It serves those who control. It serves a purpose because we're easy to control if we're falling asleep. And addictions is a huge thing. Gabor Mate, I love Gabor Mate's work.
Me too.
And that, what we addicted to, we might think of, oh, well, I'm not addicted to alcohol or heroin. Really addicted to. And there might be ways of thinking about things, that certain people in the world are problems. That's why it's political.
And I think, you know, obviously during COVID, a lot of people had to do what you just said, sit with their emotions, because the escapism were taken away, whether that was, you know, the gym or, you know, narcotics or substance abuse. And I think for so many people, they did have to sit with those emotions and really ask, you know, where was the pain coming from? So
absolutely. But we're not prepared to do that, because that innate gift of play has been blocked from us. So it's like we have to first of all awaken that in order to support us in being able to stay present.
I think, again, if translated into the work we do, is that it's a very embodied experience, and it gets you to dissipate this hurried, busy energy, which is, you know, in the workplace. And in doing so, you become more present, because oftentimes you can say, you know, play makes you more present. And you would say, kind of dangles out, you're like, oh, kind of understand that. It's the dissipation of energy, but it's also like actually focusing on something, not context switching continuously. And we were watching something, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, we're big fans of his work. Pretty big books. We've made our way through them, but worth the read, of course. But he said attention is a moral act. And it got us to think of, like, again, in the workplace, there's some people we're just not fully focusing on, and it is a moral act. Like, we should probably spend a little bit more time, as opposed to it's a quick meet. Again, it's very easy for us to say, you know, we're the Lego people, but, like, you know, our workplace is busy too. But there is a sense of morality through focus, and by zoning out of other things, because we're inundated with a number of different meetings. Another phone goes off, everything. We're just saturated in it. And that's what play, or Lego Serious Play, can do. It's just get you to create a space and a time to focus. And having listened to his work about it being a moral act, it just, your attention now feels there's a gravitas more than you would even consider to it. But again, I think this could be like a 7-hour conversation. We're going to go to your, you go.
Can I just say something?
Of course.
I deliver an emotional resilience training, and attention is crucial in that. We're sold this myth that we can multitask. And it is a myth.
Total.
But Sharon Salzberg, in response to Ian Gilchrist saying attention is a moral act, Sharon Salzberg talks about presence, our presence of mind being an act of love. So if our mind is all over the place, we're not present. So play, being with someone in play, not thinking what purpose can this play serve, but just be in it, in it now. That's the process of it.
Absolutely. So
the bills,
we're going to transition to the bills. We had other questions, but this could be forever. We're probably going to bring you back, if that's okay.
Lovely. Part 2 to be continued.
So this is something we were playing with. We figured, look, if we're going to do a podcast, and we want it to be a little bit more visual, again, facial expressions, body posture, we're big on that. We thought, and we're Lego Serious Play facilitators, maybe we could get our people to build some stuff, and we asked them some questions, and you very bravely said, yup, I'm up for that one. So if you think of this section now as the way you have like I'm talking to our listeners here, but like a record, and then it kind of plays off, and then there's a hidden track. This isn't the hidden track. This is a very visual track. This is the opposite to a hidden track, very visual. And we asked you can go for build number 1.
Okay, build number 1. What inspires you about your work, and what keeps you curious and motivated, was build number 1.
So can we see that amazing build, please? We posted you Lego. You were very brave. Please show the world. Again, probably got like 4 listeners. Okay. You can talk us through that.
Okay. So there's quite a lot of spaces in between.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for it not to be crowded.
Yeah.
So I wanted all the elements in it. So I've got water and earth underneath, and air.
Right.
And fire.
Fire. Cool.
So they're really important. This is a table here. I don't know if you can see. It's a round,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's a round table with lots of seating around it, and that's an invitation to come and sit together and eat whatever and feast. Actually, feast. That feels really important, and it's a round table because we're all equal. We are all equal. Here is, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah.
This is water.
Yeah.
At the bottom of there is mud, and right in the bottom of there are dragonfly nymphs.
Okay.
Nice.
Because I love dragonflies and the symbolism of dragonflies. So they are probably what would be a guide for me in my life.
Cool.
And I love the fact that they are in the mud and you would not pay any attention to them. They just look incredibly ordinary. And then they emerge and they literally just step out with these phenomenal wings.
Wow. Which
are the most beautiful things in the world, I think, apart from babies. I haven't got any babies in here. And so I just love dragonflies. And we've got some loti. My son told me that they're not lotuses, they're loti.
Oh, plural, right.
So he knows these things. And then there are places where you can just step out.
Okay.
Because there's something around just taking risks. I think that's really important, that it's not as there is safety here, but it's not all safe. And I think there's lots of different places to move beyond. So this is a stepping out. This is a springboard into something else. And I don't know what that is, because play is stepping out into the unknown.
Right.
That's really important, because if we know how play is going to end, we're not actually playing. And then I have got here, which is from one of the other.
A little bit closer, small bit closer. Perfect. Yeah,
so it's a net. And that's a reference to Indira's net.
Okay.
So that we're all connected, and that if I pull one bit there, someone else is going to be affected by that. So there's lots of wind as well. You can see from this flag that's waving. And then there's this thing here, which I've just pulled off. But actually, that is a bit of you can kind of catapult yourself from that place outwards as well. So there's lots of references about moving outwards. Here, this bit here, again, these steps. Not quite sure what this is, but there's something maybe around a jewel, some treasure. And again, it's a place to step off.
Okay.
This is a really important place, because sometimes the world is not a safe place. And sometimes we need to protect ourselves. So we can just take a little peek out there, but not be seen.
I love it.
And this is, again, it's just a way of seeing something beyond. I'm not quite sure. I think there's an archway there. It's a bit of a threshold. I love thresholds. And there's a really important threshold between everyday reality and play reality, that I think as well, recognizing when we're in the play and when we're not in the play is really important. And that's got a little bit of fire at the top as well. And then we've got a tree, so hopefully it will attract lots of birds from the outside. So that's kind of it, really.
Incredible.
That's beautiful. I do like the fact that it's a stepping off. I mean, your conceptualizing of it is not that everything is on the base plate. That's unusual for us to see it.
Is it?
Yeah, it is quite unusual. It's you referencing it as the platform,
the springboard,
springboard to move out is
into the unknown, what play is. So
absolutely, and it's about expansion. So I'd love to see other people's around this and see what happens in between. Yeah.
It depends on how brave they are. I think are you calling them out? Are you calling out future guests? Be brave. Let Ronan and Jane post some Lego to you.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Good.
Without a shadow of
It's a
doubt.
challenge.
Absolutely.
It's a playful Die Gamage's playful challenge to the rest of the listeners out there, or
indeed.
the future guests. Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Right.
just must say that I've got an 11-year-old boy that I work with who was very excited to do one of these, and he said, "Can I have it? Can I have it?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure. I'll need to ask."
Of course he can.
You got it. There's no repost. We're delighted. Yeah. We do suggest sometimes it goes to charity or goes home. So brilliant.
It's a good home, so we're happy with that.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I've got lots of child clients. Well, actually, my son, who's 22 and second-year law student, he loved making the ambulance.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, nice. I like it. I would say that that's the point as well, is oftentimes it's just, again, focus on a task and a sense of achievement. I did that thing.
And it's an act of mindfulness as well.
Active mindfulness.
Definitely.
And for a stressed, 22-year-old in law college, it can help. And the Lego group are, reorientating themselves to adults more and more.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Final question.
One for the road.
One for the road. What's one piece of advice you can offer our listeners about play and playfulness in the workplace?
Very good. I'm going to just take a moment because it feels weighted, does this? If you need to call it creativity, call it creativity, if that sits more comfortably for people. But honor it, give it space, recognize its value, and give it time. I think you're absolutely right. We live in such busy times. We put ourselves under so much stress, and we don't need to. I think there's a difference between working kind of in this busy way and working smartly. Understand that we can work smartly. I know for myself around creativity, if I try to push something, forget it. Just forget it. When we let go of that thinking of must, should, ought, it will emerge. We have to trust the play. It's always there for us, and accessible. But we have to create the conditions that allow play to emerge.
Beautiful.
What a way to end. Yeah. Perfect finish.
Thank you so much, D Gamage.
I've loved this. I've just
been amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, you're most likely going to be back. Guest number 4. But
it's been incredible.
Yeah.
To share your incredible wisdom and insights with us and our listeners. It's been an absolute treat for us.
Highly recommend your book. We're going to put it in the show notes. It's been a milestone for us, and it's been an honor listening. It's been great. So thank you so much.
Thank you, so much. Thank you for doing the work that you do as well, because that's vital work. So it's great to meet fellow travelers.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.